Good evening and welcome to Wednesday Night Undressed, an amusing application of elusive alliteration. May I please introduce our panelists for tonight. The indefatigable, somewhat indomitable, if not irrefutable Kathleen Taylor.
How do you do?
A man from legend. Jason Springer now.
JT, what's good?
What's up? That marvel of female bohemian sophistication, Jane Carter. The Transylvanian Dark Lord of Literature and Pheromones, Ivo Ivanov.
Yes, that's me.
Who's got egg salad next to me. Oh, God, how am I going to do this? Chris Magerkurth is with us again. And Lin Wang, all the way from China. Or maybe downtown Kansas City, who knows? And, of course, the most interesting man in the world, smarter brother, the magic Dr. Orlando. My name's Jeremy Taylor, the Brit on the radio in your lugholes. And we'll start with the first question. You are not allowed to say, I didn't, as an answer. Radio, growing up, what did you listen to? Let's start with Chris. What did you listen to when you were a kiddie on the radio?
Well, I always like to listen to the Top 40 Countdown with Casey Kasem. I listened to the Royals a lot during my formative years, and then pop stations most of the time. I remember roller skating in grade school, and they'd have whatever the Top 40 radio station is in Manhattan, Kansas, playing.
Roller skating?
Yes, roller skating. Shoes with wheels on them.
No, I know what roller skates are. Yeah. Mine were called Jackos. Or Jackies.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, a little rubber bounce stops on the front.
You betcha.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, Casey Kasem. Who did we listen to? Wolfman Jack.
Yeah, I listened to him on records. I had a collection of his radio shows that my parents somehow acquired, and they were all really old, but it was lots of fun to listen to those.
Dr. Orlando.
In the 70s, like, there was a weird amalgamation of like pop music was everything. Like, you could have country, you could have like western. So I listened to, quite honestly, until 8 years old, I listened to what my dad listened to, which was country music or NPR. I remember the day I first heard like Top 40. I was 8 years old. My cousin came over, turned on the radio, and the song called "Ring My Bell" came on.
You can ring my bell,
Ring my bell,
My bell, ring my bell.
So that was the first probably popish R&B pop tune that I ever heard. From that point on, I was completely addicted to R&B/pop music. My dad had an 8-track recorder in our front room where I could listen to the radio, push play on the 8-track recorder, and record songs directly off the radio. So at 8 years old, I had like the greatest hits of like 1979 all recorded on an 8-track. So that was me and music when I was a young kid.
Jason.
Well, let's see. Mine is kind of a blend of both of those. I, too, remember Casey Kasem and The Countdown, which was fantastic. And also to kind of echo the doctor, I was heavily influenced by my parents as well. But mine was kind of all 70s rock and roll, if you will. There was a lot of Billy Joel and Fleetwood Mac and Bob Seger. And that really wasn't by choice. I was kind of made to perform. And here's what I mean by that. So my parents would have neighborhood parties, like block parties, and there I am, 4 or 5 years old, and they would put on a record, and all these adults would be drunk, and there's this little kid just dancing his ass off to some Billy Joel, and they thought it was funny.
Can you demonstrate that for us right now?
I cannot. No, I'm not nearly that limber anymore, so that's not going to happen. And so I was kind of made to perform, but it was fun. I loved it, but then as I got older, probably just classic rock. Again, mainly from my brother. That's kind of where I picked that up. So a lot of 101 The Fox when I was a kid.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
I'm in law school right now, right? So everybody in my class is 15 to 20 years younger than I am.
Sure.
And these fuckers are sitting in class the other day talking about old-timey rock like Bon Jovi and Def Leppard.
Well, if you listen to the Fox now,
Yeah.
that's what you hear. You hear songs from Def Leppard and Bon Jovi and Guns N' Roses, and you're thinking, this is not a classic.
Right.
But it kind of is now.
kinda is,
Yeah.
I know.
Thinks he laughed at me.
Lin, what did you listen to as a kid? Into the
I
microphone, Lin.
I did not have a lot of freedom, so whatever my dad was listening, I was listening.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. What sort of programs would they be?
Like news, like football match, like here in the baseball match, similar in nature, or Beijing Opera. Like when I grew up, I hate it. Seriously. But now I appreciate that. I think it comes with life experience, and I'm glad I have that discipline and structure set up earlier at a younger age, and later you can really go back and appreciate that. But I also listen to like what you're talking about, but that's more later, not listen from radio, but more like watch TV, like
So more as an adult, not
right,
as a
like
kid.
Guns N' Roses. I have
Yeah.
serious crush on.
Axel.
Oh,
She's a
Good
big
old Axl.
Scorpions fan too.
that's not true.
Ivo, when you were growing up, you're on the other side of the Iron Curtain and all this sort of thing, and listening to Radio Free America and so on. But before that, when you were younger, let's say 10 or 12 or something like that, before you got sort of politically correct and politically into things, what would you have listened to? Because your dad was a bit of a lad about,
Well, we didn't have this abundant fountain of radio stations that you guys had here, and all that we had was 2 stations. They were both of them were government radio stations. One of them was called Horizon, and the other one was called Hristo Botev. And Hristo Botev is a Bulgarian poet and a revolutionary, and they named the radio station after him. So Hristo Botev was more arts inclined. Horizon was more propaganda inclined. So Hristo Botev, I would listen. All that they would play was classical music, opera and classical music, non-stop. And also we had Italian pop music back in the 60s and 70s and the 80s was called Estrada. And so we had Estrada music that we had adopted from the Italian pop music, and kind of had the same kind of melodies and hooks that are very easily digestible, and that's what we listened to. We didn't have choice.
Did they play the Chips theme song on that station?
I wish.
That'd be awesome.
Later on, when in the late 70s, when actually hard rock music and rock music was kind of elbowing its way on the world stage, it started slowly leaking through, and we had this program on Horizon called Musical Staircase or Musical Chart, and that was the only program that actually played stuff like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple.
So was that your version of like the top 40 countdown?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so we were obsessively listening the entire generation of teenagers that they were teenagers in the 70s and 80s would listen to that program, and that was our only doorway to the Western music. We obviously there was no internet. It was very tough to smuggle in albums and stuff. But like Jeremy said, in the 70s, the U.S. Congress did something brilliant. Genius. One of the very few genius things that even the broken clock shows the right, time twice a day. But what they did is they realized that we live in an information vacuum behind the Iron Curtain, and we're bombarded and indoctrinated with communist propaganda, and they needed to somehow counteract this. So they decided to spend like $15-16 million to start 2 radio stations in Germany and England. They were called VOA, Voice of America, and Radio Free Europe.
Yep.
Those 2 programs hired Bulgarian dissidents or Russian dissidents and Chinese dissidents, and they broadcast on the corresponding language on the shortwave radio. My dad, he had this VEF transistor radio manufacturer in Eastern Germany,
Not
and
about to get your dad in trouble, right?
yeah, well, no, I could back then. We would listen to it only late at night because during the day they would they would flood the radio waves and you couldn't hear it very well. But at night you could get a clear signal, and it was illegal, dangerous. We would surround the transistor radio in a small kitchen that was as far from the neighbors as possible so they couldn't hear us, and quietly listen to the actual news, the information coming unfiltered, propaganda-free from the West. It was also propaganda. But I remember in the 90s I came here and I started researching this, and I found out that there were huge deliberations in Congress to cut funding for those two radio stations, saying they don't reach anybody, it's just a waste, government waste, what are you doing wasting $17 million? And I wish I could tell these congressmen, guys, you were a lifesaver. These programs were lifesavers. They helped us. They helped open up our minds and give us actual information, and they sped up the fall of communism in my mind.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Kathleen.
Oh, well, you don't believe me, but I keep telling you, I did not listen to music. I did not listen to radio. Throughout my childhood, I was reading. And I'm an immersion reader. When I'm reading, I don't hear what's going on around me.
You really. I mean,
I did not listen to radio.
Not even one. There was no one.
Maybe
artist that
my
made
dad
you-
had a baseball program on once in a while. A baseball game. No, I did not
Wow.
listen to radio.
Okay.
I don't think I had a radio. I don't know if there was one in the house. If there was, I didn't pay attention to it.
So are you
I was
musical?
reading.
Are you musical? Do you play an instrument or anything like that?
I took piano lessons.
Gotcha.
And I took guitar lessons.
Have you
I
tried-
still don't consider myself musical.
Have you tried reading while listening to music? I've done that a lot.
No,
There are
because
some-
it's a huge waste. I don't hear what's going on.
How about, you can read Anthony Burgess's Clockwork Orange and listen to the Ninth Symphony, and that's just perfection.
No, I think that's just a little. No, that
Kathleen's
would be really
children
weird.
say that you could let off an atomic weapon if Kathleen is quilting or reading. You could let off an atomic weapon and she wouldn't know.
Quilt something while listening to the Sex Pistols. I want to see that quilt.
That would be
That would be awesome.
Okay, let's move on to the next question that we're going to discuss tonight. So Hugh Hefner's died the other day. My question for the panel is, what, in your opinion, did he do that was positive with his magazine? What did Hugh Hefner do that was positive?
Does toilet paper
with
count?
Kathleen, let's start with Kathleen.
I just asked. It's probably very handy as paper.
So nothing positive.
I didn't actually read very much of it, so I couldn't give you any positive stuff about it.
So you did read
Did
some of
anybody
it.
ever read it?
No, I don't think I ever read any of it.
I have. Obviously, he's done so many bad things. He's basically, he himself said that women are objects. He objectified women. That was his thing. He's done a lot of very shady and sketchy things. Good things. He probably was always a little bit ahead of his time in terms of liberalism, free speech, First Amendment. I think
Same with Larry Flint. Same thing. Same kind of thing. Yeah.
he foresaw things a little bit ahead of time. He sped up the sexual revolution. That magazine started in 1953.
Yeah.
You guys consider what the minds were in 1953. He, paradoxically, he was on the side of women's movement many, many times.
Very much so.
Women's rights, gay rights, LGBT community. He was so far ahead. In the 1960s, he was lobbying for full, same-sex marriage, LGBT rights, all of that stuff. He was way, way, way ahead of his time. And people, of course, ridiculed him for it. But there was a guy that didn't care. He never cared about that. What else? He's a great philanthropist. He's donated to gazillion causes. He's donated so much money to the Democratic Party. He's endorsed, he was big proponent of Barack Obama, where not many people believed in Barack Obama before, he was there before he even started running for president. He was on his side. You know, and one of the, and you know what, he's contributed to journalism. When I first heard Miles Davis, it was relatively late in my life, like probably mid '80s, and I got obsessed with Miles Davis, and started looking frantically for information. One of the very first things about Miles Davis that I read was an incredible interview in Playboy with Miles Davis. And it was really fantastic journalism, fantastic job by the journalist interviewing him and introducing him. And we laugh about people reading Playboy, but actually there was some good journalism in Playboy.
Yeah, I've read a lot of good short stories. That was one of the things that, when I would buy the magazine, I would turn quickly to the short stories because there were a lot of really good ones in there.
Yeah.
And Chris, you didn't buy the magazine, obviously, for the girlies. I mean, I
bought it for the girlies.
And the stories.
I'm not going to sugarcoat that one. That was a big reason to buy the magazine, but I mean, for like Ivo said, I mean, his pushing of progressive ideas at that time was probably the biggest positive.
Do you have a magazine that you remember particularly fondly?
No, not really.
So
Lewis.
My dad had a subscription to Playboy, and he kept them in the top drawer of his chest of drawers.
Yeah.
And from the time that I was about 8 until puberty set in, I read the articles exclusively. Right around puberty time, I became interested in other things, so I stopped reading the articles. But one absolutely sticks out in my head. I don't remember when it was. If I say the name Wayland Flowers and Madam, does that ring a bell for anybody? No.
Wayland Flowers
Yeah.
does, but I can't place it.
Madam was the puppet. He was a puppeteer. He had
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about.
Madam
Yeah.
did a spread in Playboy, and she literally had like torpedoes for boobs in the magazine.
That sounds
And
about
I
right.
remember
Yeah. Yep.
that magazine because I thought it was. I don't remember how old I was when I saw it, but I remember thinking, this is maybe the stupidest thing that I've ever seen.
Jane, we're talking here, of course, about Hugh
there's-
Hefner dying. What, in your opinion, did he do that was positive with his magazine? Positive.
Well, I have to say, coming in on what Ivo was saying about the articles, just remembering, especially when I was a kid, that because of course my father had Playboys too.
Maybe
he
we got
hid
the
them
same father.
a bit better. But I would stumble upon them every once in a while, and he would get reprimanded by my mom. But the articles, I remember, especially in high school, a lot of my peers, fellow guys, would talk about, oh, did you read that article in Playboy? So yeah, it was. I guess that's really all I have to contribute is that I did read some of them. I specifically I remember reading one that was actually a bit older about Muhammad Ali that they did in there, and it was really great. So I was never well versed with Playboys. I never actually subscribed or read them, but I did read that, and that was good.
Lynn, did you ever come across a Playboy?
No, I've never even read one so far. No, I have never even read one so far. So.
But you know what a bunny girl is?
Yes, I do.
Right. So we've got some information there to China, one way or another. Kathleen.
Oh, no, I already did that.
Jason, though, has...
I already did
Jason
that.
went.
Sorry,
My mind's a
I did
little-
the wrong thing. Jason.
I go with the whole reading aspect, but mine weren't short stories or anything like that. I'll be honest. I was moving around a lot as a kid and going from school to school. And the first thing I would do is read the jokes. This way I could kind of learn
Somebody
the
who's
jokes.
honest.
I would read the
Yeah.
Page, wasn't
I
there?
would I'd read the jokes page. Or right on the other page of the centerfold, I'd read the jokes. That
That's
way
what
I could kind of
everybody goes
remember
to
them.
Reader's Digest
And that way I
too.
could go to school the next day and bust out the jokes
Yeah.
and make kids laugh and
You know what?
Yeah.
I remembered the jokes that were like in the little cartoons that were at the bottom of the page, but I did not remember that they had a joke page.
Oh yeah.
There
Yeah,
was
they
a
did.
page,
Yeah, I
and there was
remember
a
that now.
black bunny in reversed out.
Yeah.
A
Why are you
black
bringing
bunny
up the
girl
fact that
sitting
it's black?
at the
What the
top.
fuck, Jeremy?
Wasn't it? It was reversed out.
That's right.
Print. Yeah, I'm right about that, aren't I?
It was on the opposite side of the centerfold.
It's interesting. He had he had these amazing authors that they would do interviews with. I think it was cool.
Gore Vidal and modern
authors like Chuck Palahniuk, and I mean, there's tons of people.
Because
Asimov,
someone
Norman
compared
Mailer.
it with Hustler, and Hustler's all about tits
It's
and
obnoxious,
arse. It's not about it's.
There's
he
a
tried-
cultural aspect to Playboy for sure.
He created a movement, if
Yeah.
you will, and
Yeah,
but
he
he
did.
was also he objectified women.
You had a movement.
He married a million. How many women did he marry? Oh, and he had like his latest wife. He had what 60-year gap there. He was he called feminism stupid or something. And he did good. He saved the Hollywood sign. Did you not know that he
Yeah, I knew
saved the
that.
Hollywood
Yeah, I
sign?
knew that,
He did good things. He donated money to extremely worthy charities. So if the question is, was he a good man or a bad man? The answer is yes.
Yeah, he's like all of us.
That's a good answer.
He had his flaws, but he had his good points as well.
You, Jeremy.
Oh well, the first and only Playboy that.
Of course, this is the only one.
yeah.
That I was with Jane Seymour in it. Otherwise, I have no idea at all what you're talking about. Yes. And why does one mother find Playboys? How is that? Do they have a radar? Is there a sort of like
just
a
snoops.
Playdar put in?
We are stupid and young simultaneously. Like, most of the time, it's just because I've got little kids now, so I know they leave shit out.
Yeah.
Like,
Or hide it in an obvious place.
yeah.
Yeah.
But where were really
Or they're
good
really
places
dirty
to
and they
hide,
don't clean up, so mom
hide
comes
naughty
in and clean up.
magazines? That's. I mean, I know where my brother used to hide his magazines.
Yeah.
Because you have a wash basin, what a wash basin is, right? Well, it's actually called a pedestal wash basin because most of them are
Thank
on
you.
a
I was
pedestal.
so confused about
Right.
that. It had been keeping me
And
up
that,
at night.
I know,
and
I can
that
sleep now.
pedestal,
Yeah.
that pedestal is a casting, right? So that means there's a gap behind it, right? And that's where magazines used to get hidden. So I would, when I was in the bathroom, I would pull them slightly, just out slightly, so my mother could see that there was a magazine there. You see?
Yeah.
Well, it's also true that we learned where to hide them from our dads, because you've obviously found your dad's stash, and I found my dad's stash too. So
My dad didn't teach me very well because he would just put them on the back of the toilet in the bathroom. Yeah.
Louis.
my uncle just had them stacked, like 3 feet high by the side of his bed.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
And let me suggest that, Louis, the only reason you didn't run away from home at 14 was that subscription of your father.
Damn Playboys.
Tell me something. I'm a foreigner.
No.
Oh, yes, I am.
Oh.
You wouldn't believe it, would you? But I am.
Shit,
I'm a
man.
foreigner, and I've been welcomed here in America. Why
then
is
I'm
the
doing it wrong.
rescue of Puerto Rico it seems like it's not cared about in the same way as, say, New Orleans or Houston
Or Florida.
or Florida or whatever. But just why is it just doesn't seem to be cared about in the same way?
Gee, let's think. What do you suppose it could
Are they
be?
a little too brown, maybe?
Ding, 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 ding.
So let's start with Lewis, Dr. Orlando.
I don't know. For me, it's real simple.
Yeah.
Different president. Like,
Sorry, say again.
different president. We had a president when Katrina happened that, although we all thought was incompetent at the time, seems to be a fucking nuclear scientist by comparison to who we've got right now.
Yeah.
So,
don't you mean nuclear?
I mean,
Nuclear.
yes, nuclear, yes. So for me,
it's the way he walks.
It's I wasn't a fan of how Katrina was handled, but it's a damn sight better than what's happening for Puerto Rico.
I don't
Yes.
think Trump has yet figured out that Puerto Rico is the responsibility of the United States, that it's part of the United States. He just doesn't understand. He's too
I
stupid.
think somebody did tell him after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he
they
doesn't
did.
retain things more than 5 seconds.
Well,
They told him it's an actual island. Then you know.
Oh, then
It's
he's decided
surrounded
Then they
by,
told him that.
it's
lots of
surrounded
water,
by sea.
very
Yeah,
far
it's a big
away.
ocean.
Yeah.
Water.
We can't drive our trucks there.
No.
Jane, why is the rescue of Puerto Rico? It doesn't seem to be cared about in the same way as, say, New Orleans.
Well, the first thing I thought of was pretty much what Lewis was saying. And then all of a sudden something popped into my mind. I don't quite speak American. It's the first thing that I thought of.
with
Not quite American.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not quite.
So there you have it.
Yeah.
And you know the attention span of this guy, right? It was exhausted halfway through what happened in Texas. He
It was
barely
exhausted
kept
after
his
the first day
attention
when he was sworn
on
in.
Florida.
Yeah.
It just couldn't get there.
Well,
So Chris, well, you're. Let's be blunt, Chris. You're middle-aged white American. You're the standard American boy
Yeah,
growing up.
and it's probably
So what do you reckon?
it's probably racism. I mean, it's just the fact that because it's not just Trump. I mean, he's got a whole administration that sort of is kind of supposed to help him handle these things, and it's an island. It's away from the main coast. It's they don't.
It's out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and they're not the same skin color as the majority of his administration, and so it just kind of gets. Well, they'll handle it.
But he also probably thinks that he's really doing all he can. Like, I mean, I think he's got it in his mind that, well, okay, I said I would do this, and I signed off on this. We're doing lots.
And I threw,
We're doing
I threw rolls of
Yeah.
paper towels at them.
Yeah,
so look at what I did.
Yeah, see?
No,
I
you
did
said
it.
He
But-
thinks. He doesn't think.
No, he thinks. It's just he doesn't think at a very deep level. It's just he thinks that I'm doing a great job. Look at what I'm doing. I'm a great person. I'll yell at this guy. I'll yell at that guy, and I've done my job.
So, Lynn, Puerto Rico, as most American knows, quite close to the coast of China.
closer.
No, you gotta be kidding me.
That's Japan, isn't it?
Dominican Republic and Cuba.
Yeah. So, what do you think, as one of the three real foreigners here? Is there something missing? What do you think?
Well, I'll agree with what you all said in substance. I think the admin is not really taking it seriously. A and B is probably because it's island. Main residence is minority, so.
And of course, it is surrounded by sea.
Right.
Well, can I just point out one
Yes.
thing? In the first two hurricanes that hit Texas and Florida, the response was handled on automatic by the agencies, mostly the local stuff. They were ready, they had people, they could get them there. It didn't really depend on the federal government coming in to help out. Puerto Rico was totally destroyed. It depends on the federal government. That's the difference between these episodes. Puerto Rico needs us. The others had most of their help in place already.
Before I come to Jason next, interesting that I discovered sitting at home because I was angry about something yesterday. I just decided to take an hour out. The governor of Puerto Rico is saying, you know what, we've got everything we need here. What we can't do is get it out. And one of the things that they're talking about is containers. Very interesting, this. Although, yes, they do need truck drivers, and that's a subject itself. What we forget is that containers are actually owned by people. And so when a container comes off a ship, it's put down on the dock, and then proverbially a truck comes to collect it, and that container is then given to the truck, and the truck goes off. Well, if you own the container, right, and a different truck comes and picks it up, the container has been stolen and is therefore not insured, and so on and so forth. They have a real problem with dealing with how to release the containers even when they do have trucks, which is why the Army is being so successful. Jason, your view?
Well, I kind of echo what Lou was talking about with the president, and also what some of you guys talked about with the administration. It's one of the things that that's very disturbing to me is it wasn't until the media began to actually criticize the administration, not just Trump, but the entire administration and the entire government, that they finally got off their ass and said, oh, I guess that's our responsibility to go do something. That's unsettling.
10 days? A
Yeah,
week? Over a week.
That is unsettling because it's not just Trump, it's the entire breed in Washington. They just said, oh, that's not our problem. And that's just, that was just shocking to me. That's really sad.
And then once things weren't happening fast enough and criticism started rolling out, the tweets started going.
Exactly, of
I'm
course.
like, are you kidding me? You've got to be kidding me.
I mean, that's almost basically his MO now. That's what he does.
Well, he's also...
Evo.
Yeah, don't forget something else that probably plays a role in this. 3.5 million people live in Puerto Rico. That's actually a substantial chunk of potential votes. The problem is those people don't vote. They don't vote for Congress. They don't vote for Senate. They don't vote for president.
They don't have any rights.
Trump doesn't care about them at all. They have
nobody in Washington, not just Trump. Nobody.
Washington. They're represented by a non-voting observer in U.S. Congress. They don't pay taxes, so they don't care. They don't care about them.
I thought they did pay taxes, but
they don't pay corporate taxes. Corporations don't pay taxes there in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is poor and is drowning in deficit. They're drowning in deficit. They have $72 billion deficit, and that's partly because of Wall Street, and that's since 2014. They have a 10-year-long recession. So he is using this opportunity. First of all, we're talking about a president who is completely, he has his compassion surgically removed, apparently. That guy is incapable of any compassion, and obviously, like what you said, if you're not at least as white as Owen Wilson, you have no chance of him paying any kind of attention to you. You have to be white. Why? You have to get moonburn. You have to be that white. Otherwise he's not going to even.
Unless you got a ton of money, and then he'll probably listen to you regardless of what your color your skin is.
Maybe if he still had his golf course, which by the way bankrupted over there. He had a golf course in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, ironically, means rich port. By the way, and they've been struggling to become another state for 100 years.
Complete independence. They'd be happy with either one.
No, they have three political parties. The most powerful two political parties are trying to turn them into a state. They have a third political party that's fighting for independence. Only 2% of the populace votes for them. So they want to become a state, but the states don't want them. Right. Our government doesn't want them. They look at them as potential 3.5 million Democratic voters. They don't want to have anything to do with them. So, and they speak Spanish is the main language. English is second language. So Mr. Trump, he can care less about these poor people dying.
And again, it's not just him; it's all of Washington.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because let's look at the Jones Act, which raises the prices there because. In order to bring stuff from the U.S. mainland to Puerto Rico, it has to be a U.S.-built ship, registered in the U.S., manned by a U.S. crew.
That idiot throwing paper towels at the people is
that
one of the most surreal things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, and then they had a conference call with, I think it was the head of FEMA or one of the disaster agencies, and the mayor of San Juan was allowed in only as a listener. She couldn't comment because apparently for comments against Trump.
That's so
just recently. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And who throws like this? Did you see his mechanics? It's ridiculous.
Is it true that he took his golf clubs just in case he could get a game in?
I don't know, but his visit
Probably.
lasted, apparently they calculated that his visit lasted as long as a round of golf would last. It was a photo op. It was shameful.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It's just, it's a farce. It's farcical.
Let's move on to the next subject. And I want you to think, as we approach this, that we're in the Oval Office and the President, for some reason, has an English accent. And the staff have been summoned, the heads of departments and everybody else and his advisors and so on and so forth.
Sir James Dyson.
Yes. And he says something along the following: gun ownership in America is a right. medical care seems to be a financial privilege or a commodity. And since that's not going to change anytime soon, how might we, the government, state or federal or the White House, go about helping innocent bystanders who are being financially devastated with medical costs, who have been innocently caught in a crossfire, such as recently in, say, Lawrence, Kansas, or in Las Vegas, there are 500, nearly 600 of them, or in, say, a terrorist incident such as Boston. I want to know how we can do something to alleviate the cost to people who haven't done anything at all wrong. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I'd like to start with Jason.
Well, El Presidente, since you are now the...
CC?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The first thing I would tell you is you're doing a horrible job, because you're sitting here talking about how do we help the innocent, and you don't even help the people who serve your country and get shot, and you don't even help veterans. So I would tell you, help them first and actually show that you care about people who actually work for the government and serve the government and go fight for your lovely country. Then maybe you go look and help these innocent people, because I mean that's the one thing that our government especially should be just horribly ashamed of is.
But with respect, Jason, the reality is that gun laws, even if I wanted to, by presidential decree, gun laws probably aren't going to change. How might we go about helping the innocents?
What makes you think that healthcare is going to change?
I'm not talking about
healthcare.
What I'm talking about is, could there be some federal law that a person who is
There could, but how do you prove when someone goes to the hospital? How do you prove that they were one of the...
Well, I'm asking you, how would you do it?
I'm asking you. I don't know how to do that.
Well, this is what we pay you the $100,000 a year for, and you're called the Secretary of State.
I thought that was
$100,000 a year.
I thought that was like to hold your golf clubs while we were golfing, man. To be your caddy. That's what I thought my job was.
Chris, how do you answer this question?
I'd like to short circuit it. If you're not going to work on gun control, the one thing that's really been missing here in the debate about Las Vegas is mental health care, because obviously the shooter had serious mental health issues. Apparently he was high functioning, because even his brother was just totally shell-shocked by what happened. And I think a large part of the problem, particularly with these white male shooters, is the fact that they have undiagnosed mental health issues. And because there's a stigma around actually seeking help for said health issues, that it ultimately leads to these gentlemen breaking and doing these horrific things. And
so how do you pay for it?
Dr. Orlando, you want to jump in?
No.
Key question, how do you pay for it?
Do, because for me, the problem is exactly what Jason said. You weren't even here. We had like a brief conversation about this right before you walked in, and my example was our government does not know how to adequately fund health services
Not at all.
for the military.
No.
If our government can't fund services for the military, how are we going to foot the bill for taking care of all of these people that we're talking about right now? I think it needs to be done. I'm not saying that it shouldn't. I'm just saying, what can we do? What realistically could we do as a government, as a self-functioning entity, as a for-profit entity? What can we do to get this paid for?
The first thing I would do is I would separate out some of the costs in medical. So the first thing I would do is basically define, this is preventative care and this is emergency care, and essentially treat it like you treat your car. You buy insurance for emergency purposes, but your regular maintenance, that's on your own dime. I guess you could buy insurance to take care of the regular maintenance,
but some kind of mandated insurance that people have to buy?
No, what you do is you say things like doctor visits.
That's where we are.
Lab tests, X-rays. The general, just basic stuff. It's not an emergency. You need to go get a checkup. Open that up to the free market. Allow people to make deals with their doctor. Say, I'll pay you $20 a month for 2 doctor visits a year. Open it up so that lab companies who do lab tests have to compete with each other for your dollar to do the lab test. If you need to go get an X-ray, have a basic medical care building that all you're going to do is go in and get an X-ray. It's not like you've been in a car wreck. That's what you buy insurance for, is for the unexpected things that happen. And then the other thing I would do is I would pull it out of the businesses. Have businesses give that money to their employees as a part of their salary under the provision that this money will be tax-free. You won't be taxed on it, provided that you use it for healthcare services.
Kathleen.
And then the people who actually use the healthcare are the ones who then say, this is the healthcare that I want, as opposed to some other entity.
I like that. Can we tax like Smith & Wesson? And yeah, that'd be great.
Kathleen.
There's so many things wrong with that, starting with you don't bargain with healthcare providers when you have a sick kid on your hand, even if they've got a little fever. Okay, you don't go in and say, "Well, I'll give you the chicken."
But that's not what I'm talking. Not
it
talking
just
about
doesn't work.
a sick kid. I'm talking about the kid going in for a regular checkup.
Yeah, but
if you can't afford regular checkups.
What Chris is talking about in some ways is healthcare. We are not talking about healthcare here. What we're talking about is people who have been injured in a shooting.
Okay.
And I understand all about healthcare and all the arguments and everything. I'm talking about, is there any mileage
I do have something to say about that.
in providing free healthcare at the point of delivery for people who have been injured in a shooting, and the police have determined that they were an innocent bystander, say. Kathleen.
Now, that would be cool. But what worries me is what's actually starting to happen. People who get hurt these ways, the lucky ones, the ones who have tech-savvy friends, get a GoFundMe page started for them, right? But that kind of depends on how cute you are. That is a lottery.
Yeah. No. So again, I think that the idea is that the government owes the victims of shooting care. I'm not sure that you can sell that to the other members of our government. If as president you simply say this is something that we're going to have to do, then it becomes our job to fund it. And in doing that, we have to answer the healthcare question.
Where I was going was trying to come at the gun thing from a different, completely different angle, Evo.
So it's a math problem. It's a very simple math problem. So gun manufacturing, firearm manufacturing in the United States generates about $2.3 billion a year. The costs for emergency care only is about the same. And the total cost, Business Insider recently had a study that calculated the entire cost per year from gun shooting in America. $229 billion a year. That is insane. Nobody can cover this. Nobody can cover it. This is a complex calculation, includes everything. It's not correct. Why? Because NRA spends millions of dollars to not have researchers like this. So they're trying actively to silence researchers to protect themselves from actual scientific research. But we can't cover it. There was a movement in the 90s, and it was bipartisan, to hold firearms manufacturers liable for injuries and have them pay for it, Jeremy. Well, in 2005, you probably know about this law that was passed, the Law of Protection of Commerce of Arms Act, it's called. And so this law in 2005 that was pushed by millions and millions of dollars of lobbying by the NRA basically removed all liability from gun manufacturers for covering any kind of medical costs. Now, I went into a little bit and did a little bit of research myself, found out staggering stuff. For example, a gunshot wound costs about $20,000 in emergency room in the first 35 minutes. That is average. That is insane. There's nothing we can do to. This is insane. That's why I'm saying the two issues are related. You can't start talking about.
It leads to a bigger issue.
You can't start talking about treating gun wounds without talking about regulating the fuckers that are manipulating our government and are playing with our lives and are profiteering from death. And are not shy to even say it, you know. So
here's the and
what Chris said about the mental health. So Paul Ryan, the first thing he said yesterday was, they asked him the question. He said, "We're not going to talk about guns. We're going to talk about mental health. I'm not even going to mention the word guns. We're going to talk about mental health. That's the number one issue." Well, Paul Ryan, if you're going to talk about mental health, why? After the Obama administration finally got frustrated and took the pen and passed a modest legislation to regulate the sales of firearms to mentally ill people that are licensed mentally ill. People, they said, basically the legislation said, if you have a document that you're mentally ill, or if you cannot manage your own finances, you cannot possess a firearm. Well, you know how much Donald Trump likes photo ops with his pen signing executive orders? He signed a photo op free executive order that rolled back the Obama administration executive order. He was quiet behind the scenes because he knew that it's an unpopular move and everybody hated it. You will not hear about it.
Not at
but
all.
now
It's
you can
criminal.
You might not be able to manage $1 in your bank account, but it's okay to go and buy a AR-15.
Of course.
Yeah, you've been diagnosed
Lin,
as schizophrenic, and we'll give you a gun.
Yeah.
Lin,
And close the gun show loophole that, if you buy a gun at a gun show, you got to go through the same background check as if you went to a gun shop.
Lin.
Yes.
Finally. We're allowed to listen to Lin.
Yeah, I believe in strong gun control. I think it's too easy for.
Nice and loud, Lin.
I believe in gun control. I think it's too easy for people here to get guns. Period.
Yay!
Jane,
I'm with you.
Have you got any thoughts? I mean, do you think it's right that people who are completely innocent, minding their own business, watching a rock concert or standing on the corner should be ruined because some yahoo opens fire on somebody?
No, and one of the things that I was listening to today, because, it's, once again, opened the conversation. One of the conservatives that was talking today on NPR was explaining, going back and forth with what he was listening to, because he runs a conservative talk show, and he had said something about how, nobody was really calling in talking about the Second Amendment. We were all talking about how, how it's making us feel, and so now is not the time to talk about this. This is not the time to bring up the politics. But
for years.
It was really funny because, not funny, but he said something about, the moderator was saying, well, of course, one of the overall topics of conversation is how if we could only arm everybody, then they could be, and the, of course, back and forth, what I'm saying aloud to myself is, so being armed down in that crowd would have helped how?
Yeah, more good guys with guns would have really gotten him.
This is
there were a lot
place.
of police, law enforcement there. These guys, I understand. The problem, one of the problems, I genuinely believe, is the vast majority of Americans who have weapons don't actually understand what those weapons will do. And as the SWAT team that went into the room made the point, one of their officers said, one of the reasons that we do it slowly and very quietly is because if he opened up with an AR-15 from inside the room, it would just go through the rock wall, or whatever you call it here, the drywall. It'll just shred it. And I had a row with a police officer once who sort of said, well, I always go around, and I'd shoot. And I said, do you realise that if you were out in the car park and you shot and you missed, it's going to go through one wall of the building and out the other, and it'll take out a couple of people on the way. oh, well, no, we didn't like having that conversation. And I don't literally blame Arnie, but it's a little like when Arnie shouts, "To the helicopters," and there's some guy with a heavy machine gun, and people are falling over. It doesn't work like that.
The chopper.
I think you meant get to the chopper.
The chopper.
The interesting thing is that they have at least 3 people in the hospital that are unrecognizable. They're alive, but they don't know who they are. People don't understand the horrific injuries that these weapons create. But what I was trying to do was, instead of saying we must do something about gun control, which I believe in, right?
No politician will ever put up any kind of health initiative or health care bill or anything like that to create some kind of gun violence insurance that you guys mentioned a moment ago, something like that. That'll never happen.
Why not?
Oh, this sort of
Pay
money.
for
Because honestly,
our current insurance.
because the NRA and the weapons producers who basically lobby and give them tons of cash.
Suppose
Are
they
you-
declared
are you-
the NRA a terrorist organization,
Are you
I'd
familiar
be all right
with
with that.
which it is.
Are you
I'd be
guys
all right with
familiar
that.
with the Golden Circle of Freedom Club? Have you heard of the Golden Circle of Freedom Club?
No, I saw
All right.
Kingsman, the Golden Circle.
Yeah. Golden Circle of Freedom Club is a club created by the NRA for any person that donates $1 million to them and becomes a member of this club called the Golden Circle of Freedom. These are some of the richest people in the industry, and there's so many of them that the NRA has become the biggest, most powerful lobby in Washington. There's nothing can be done. You have to completely restructure the government the way we do elections. You have to get rid of the Citizens United completely. It's impossible. It's legalized corruption. Everybody's corrupted to the bone. And to you Bernie lovers out there, I want to tell you, if there's any Bernie lovers among the listeners, Bernie voted for that 2005 law to protect gun manufacturers from liability. Hillary Clinton voted against it. And by the way, Bernie lovers, great name for a boy band.
So finally, I'd like to ask. I'd like to ask Jane.
Well done, sir.
I'd like to ask Jane, what was your father's job or profession? What did he do?
Jack of all trades.
Okay, and what did you have for breakfast?
Triscuits.
Interesting. Yes.
What was that about?
So, yes. Well, there.
Did you just have an aneurysm that we should know
Chris,
about or something?
What did your dad do?
He was a veterinarian.
Veterinarian.
Yep.
Right. And what did you have for breakfast?
Granola and orange juice.
That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work, does it?
Go with what I told you before.
What is it? Coming up with a porn name or something?
Yeah.
So
What is it?
another one which I think is quite interesting. Middle name, Kathleen. Your
Mary.
middle name, Mary. And the street you were born on.
Oh, I'm not telling. That's one of the clues to my identity.
You were born in the street?
Dr. Orlando.
Middle name Orlando.
Right.
Street I grew up on, Bunkum. Orlando
What do you
Bunkum.
think, guys? As to
Is that a porn name?
Yeah,
That,
no,
that
it's
would
a
be my
stripper
porn
name.
name.
Oh, stripper
Or
name.
stripper
Stripper
name.
name.
Yeah.
So, Evo.
No, that's not going to work with me. I have, first of all, my second name is basically an avalanche of consonants that are unpronounceable, and also is the street that I grew up in. So try this, Svetoslavov Solonska. You can't even,
Oh, well, no, I mean, she's got very long legs and leather boots. I mean, thigh boots.
Svetoslavov Solonska? I don't know.
Oh, dear.
It doesn't
Next
sound right.
time, we're going to talk, and we're going to do something we've not done before. We're going to talk about in what way today are you still part of where you come from? Okay, so what as a Bulgarian does Ivo bring to being here in America? What does Jeremy bring from Great Britain? What does Lin, for instance, having been brought up in China? Or Conroy from the rubbish flat out the back? What sort of things do we bring from where we were brought up, our childhood, that we bring on into adulthood? Dr. Orlando, you had some other ideas on this subject.
Oh, I think we can talk about this, and I think you guys will probably all come up with this yourselves, but I thought, You could look at it from just the habits from your family, the socioeconomic tendencies that are part of you. Just whatever in your life is determined by how you were brought up. Do you like to have friends over? Is that a part of your existence? Was it a part of your existence then? Just what are those factors in your life that make up who you are?
And I'd like to thank you for listening. Of course, the first thing we have to do is every Wednesday night undress, we want to thank our sponsors. And this is something Ivo is involved with. He does all the finances, Ivo does, from Bulgaria, his office in Bulgaria.
I run the marketing department for the show. And we'd like to thank today Pong. Pong, enjoy watching a blurry pixelated dot move across a pitch black screen and try to block its path with a white bar.
That sounds awesome.
With 8-bit sound.
Enjoy hours of entertainment. The only thing more painful than listening to this podcast.
We want to thank our producers and engineers, Neil Rasmussen, of course, Eric, the producer. I'd like to thank the panel tonight for joining us. Jason Springer, Chris, Lynn, Dr. Orlando, Ivo, Jane, Kath, and I am Jeremy Taylor, the Brit, on the radio in your lugholes. Thanks for listening. Yay.